Hello. The Divine Code reading for September 10th, pages 189 and 190. We are on the chapter Forbidden Statues, Images, and Pillars. Topic number 10. A form of any creature that is not worshipped, such as dragons, animal, bird, or fish, and in fact, any form from nature, to the exclusion of human and animal, or human or angel, is permitted to be made. Torah and Rima, Eurydeia, chapter 141. Even though this form, referring to the dragon, may be customarily served as an idol, the source verse does not mention other forms other than humans and angels in its prohibition. So making a dragon form for decoration is not forbidden. So even if it is for decoration, and even if it is a full frontal three-dimensional form. Rambam, The Laws of the Stars of Worship and Idols, 310, Shulchan Aruch, chapter 141. So the prohibited things, according to what the Bible verse says, it refers to humans and angels, and it would also refer to the heavenly host. So items that are not within those categories, and if they're not being served as an idol, if the dragon is being served as an idol, then it would be prohibited. If the dragon is just decorative, then it's not considered an idol in that community. Then it would not fall under the prohibited category, as well as any animals or any other objects of that kind. It is likewise permitted to engrave an image of the sun, moon, stars, or constellations, even if one only intends for those to be decoration. Rambam, The Laws of the Stars of Worship and Idols, 3, 10, and 11, writes that from the Torah, the prohibition of making a form for decoration only applies to the form of a human or angel. This accords with the opinions of Sefer HaChinuch, Commandment 39, and Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, Negative Commandment 22. These opinions all hold to the prohibition, "You shall not make with me," applies only to the form of human or angel, but not to forms or images of the sun, moon, which are not prohibited by the Torah, especially according to Rambam's reasoning for prohibiting forms of humans and angels, because others might come to worship them. Images of the sun, the moon, are not forbidden, since it was not customary for people to serve images of the actual sun or moon themselves, but rather statues of gods which represent them. It is explained by Rambam in Hirish HaMishnah Avodah Zarah 3.3, which cites the Rima Eurydeia 141.3, and also explained in Shach 141.8. So even in the cases where the sun and the celestial bodies are represented as, or there would be served as idols, people did not walk into a temple and see an image of the sun. Well, they might actually, they might see the artistic image of a sun, in which case that would be prohibited. But something you'd see at a planetarium would not be the kind of thing that they would be worshiping, unless it happened to be, in which case it would be prohibited for that reason. But in a normal sense, people are not drawn to worship. And in this chapter, it's because people are drawn to worship images of humans and angels is the reason why that's prohibited. They're not drawn to worship a globe of the moon or a globe of the sun. It is forbidden to build a house for idol or altar for idol worship. or platform. I'm sorry, I skipped a part. But if one makes a form for the purpose of idol worship, it has already been explained in topic 5, in chapter 5 above, that it is forbidden because the prohibition against making a statue or an image of an idol. So again, if it happens, these are what we're looking at right now is purely in the case of where this image is not used as an idol. Is it permitted to make the image? So for humans and angels, it's not permitted. In other celestial beings, it's not permitted. In the case of animals, dragons, stars and constellations, it is permitted as long as it's not used for idol worship. Customarily, then the images are okay for decoration. Topic 11. It is forbidden to plant an ashras, which is a tree with which idol worship was performed, or is used for the purpose of idol worship, even if one who plants it only intends it to be used for idol worship by others, but not for himself. So the tree is usually used as an aid. It might be used as an idol, but that's unusual. Normally, it's used as an aid, or it's used as a in some manner connected with the idol worship. And we're not permitted to plant the tree, even if it's not a tree that we plan to use. Other people will use it. We're still not permitted to plant the tree if it's being used for idol worship. And further on in several chapters forward, they'll be talking about the Ashras tree. They'll be going into more detail as to what's involved with an Ashras tree. It is also forbidden to plant a tree to be used to be decoration for idol worship, or to be a decoration for an altar that is used for idol worship. So if it's being used just for decorative purposes, but it's in connection with the idol worship. So if it's a tree that is actually being used with the worship, or if it's somehow if it's being used either directly or indirectly with the idol worship, or if it's just being used as a decoration, we're not allowed to plant those trees. See Rambam, Laws of Worship of Stars and Idols, 6:8, and Laws of Kings, 9:2. It is forbidden to build a house or altar for idol worship, or a platform to be used to stand an idol upon. The same applies to any vessels or ritual clothing with which one knows will be used for idol worship. Rambam, The Laws of Stars, Worship of Stars and Idols, 9:11, Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh, chapter 143. Since they are commanded to destroy an ashras, they are clearly forbidden to plant one or to build a place of idol worship. So we're not allowed to build things. We're not allowed to plant an ashras tree. We're not allowed to build a building or a platform that will be used for idol worship. Topic number 12. It is forbidden to set up a pillar, as it is called in the Torah, which is a structure, column, or stone that is being designated for groups of people to gather around for the purpose of their worship services. Obviously, it is forbidden to set up a pillar whose sole purpose is for idol worship. But if its purpose is only to serve God, even if its purpose is only to serve God, it is forbidden. Rambam, The Laws of Stars of Worship, Laws of the Worship of Stars and Idols, 6:6, and Laws of Kings, 9:2. So not only it's forbidden to plant an Asher's tree, it's forbidden to build a structure or platform. It's also forbidden to erect a monument that's used for the gathering of people. You know, they put up like in ancient England, they would put up stones, and we assume that the stones were somehow for the purpose of idol worship. It's forbidden to do that, and it's large part is even if we're doing it for God. We're saying, okay, we're going to build this, we're going to put up this pillar, and everyone will come together at the pillar. We're not allowed to do that. This applies whether one builds the pillar and sets it up, or if he designates a certain existing stone or structure to be used as a pillar. See Sifrei, Leviticus 26:1, that both a statue and a pillar are included in the prohibitions. You shall not make, and you shall not set up. Rambam explains in Negative Commandment 5 that you shall not set up refers to preserving and keeping the object, even if it was previously built. This is also the opinion given in Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, Negative Commandment 42. This also applies whether one builds the pillar and sets it up, or if he designates a certain existing stone or structure to be used as a pillar. So if a person says, okay, we're creating this structure, or we're standing up a monument stone, we're designating, or even planting a tree, we're designating a certain spot to be used for worship. And that can be for godly worship or for idol worship. If we're designating a certain spot and saying that's where we are to do it. Now, in the Torah, it mentions that the place that God says the place that I will designate. So there is one spot, that's the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. There is one spot which God designated. We are not to designate anywhere. We're not to designate locations. God designated one spot, and any other spot is not designated. But a house of prayer, such as a synagogue, is not included in the prohibition of a pillar, since it is a place that is designated specifically for people to pray without being disturbed. So the purpose of a house of prayer, it's not saying that we are to come together in this spot because this is the spot we are to come together. We're saying we're coming together in this spot because it's a spot conducive. We've created an environment conducive to prayer. Not that we're supposed to go there to pray, but rather it's an area that works for prayer. It allows us to a quiet location to do this, away from the hustle and bustle of elsewhere. But if a person wants to pray elsewhere, they can pray elsewhere. There's no people pray in their houses, people pray at work, people pray in the street. They can pray anywhere. They're not told when they build a synagogue, they're not told you have to pray there. That would be the prohibition. If someone were to say you have to pray there, then they're breaking this prohibition. They're violating the prohibition. More specifically, it is forbidden to establish a pillar for the purpose of the congregating itself, which may be for any purpose. So the pillar becomes transformed into a marker or symbol of a gathering place. It itself might become transformed into a symbol of worship. This means that the peripheral presence of the pillar will become the basic factor in the worship. See additional points on this topic in chapter 6, topic 4 below. That's in a future chapter. So the concern is if we create a structure, if we say, okay, we're getting together at a particular location and we're using this marker as a location, then the marker will take on extra significance with the worship that it shouldn't have. And this becomes difficult because as humans, we want places designated where we're to do this or that. We go to work, we have a specific place designated to go to work. We do this, we do that in our human society. We shop, we have a designated space. So how are we able to do that is that we're not saying we're coming together at this particular marker. Now, the marker itself is not the problem. It's the fact that we're saying that that's where we're going to gather. That's when it becomes a problem, because that becomes a focal point, or even if it's the peripheral, it'll become like a focal point. If we say we're going to gather at the flagpole, and that becomes the place where people gather, then the flagpole becomes a, just like a human statue. Even though in and of itself is not the problem is it becomes a focal point. It becomes something that people are concentrating on when they shouldn't be concentrating on it. So it's a delicate balance, because we have to have a place where we gather, just as a pragmatic manner. We just have to make certain we're doing it in a way that we're not having that place become the significance of what we're doing. There's no prohibition against setting up a pillar for other purposes that are not designated as places of worship, a place of worship gathering, or any kind of gathering, I suppose. You wouldn't want to have, okay, we're getting together for a club. We're in the model airplane club, and we're going to gather at this stone. That could also be a problem if the stone is designated as the place where the people that do in the model airplanes come together at the stone. That could also be a concern. Therefore, pillars and monuments that mark historic locations or honor special individuals or events in history are permitted. Responsa, Minkut, Hitchcock, Volume 1, Chapter 29. So if there's a historic marker, that would be permitted, assuming that people don't make the historic marker a gathering place. If it just is there and you're walking by it and you see it, that's not the issue. The issue is making it a gathering place. A pillar is forbidden if it is being designated to locate any type of worship service. This applies even if it is also used in the service, either to sacrifice an animal upon it. See Deuteronomy 16:22, according to Rashi's exclamation there. And Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, negative commandment 41. This refers to the prohibition of using a single stone as an altar for sacrificing, even for a one-time service. Rambam does not explicitly quote this exclamation as a negative commandment. And Ramban explains there, this may be because it is already excluded according to the commandment requirements for building a sacrificial altar even outside of the holy temple. Such an altar may still be made and used by a Gentile if it is built from multiple stones. And then, after its use, is to be taken apart and the pieces should be buried. According to Rambam's explanation there, this was a temporary commandment for Jews until the Holy Temple was built, after which it became replaced by the permanent commandment for the Jews to designate any other place for sacrificing to God. The prohibition of designating another place for sacrificing to God. There may be other reasons as well. Still, according to Rambam's definition of a forbidden pillar, it is definitely prohibited to establish a permanent pillar for the sake of anything associated with communal worship, including sacrificing upon it, even if it is assembled from pieces. So, if non-Jews are allowed to make an altar today, and we would be prohibited from making an altar for worship to God, if that's going to become an established place. Therefore, there's special rules put into play to take, after doing the sacrifices, take the pillar or take the altar apart and to bury the bones, meaning to just scatter it in such a way that it's no longer recognizable. Oh, that stone was used in the altar. No, we don't want people to be able to identify the stones. Therefore, we scatter them or bury them. According to Rambam's explanation there, this was a temporary commandment. Right. Oh, and this is explained more in part 1. That's the part on. There was a chapter on Gentiles making altars. So yeah, this applies even if it is also used in the service, either with sacrifice or animal upon it, or to pour libations upon it, as Jacob did before pillars were forbidden. See Genesis 28:19. Or to burn incense upon it, or to bow down around it, or beside it, or to call people to pray, or to sermonize from it. For to use it in any other purpose connected to worship. From this we conclude that it is prohibited to connect a pillar with any aspect of a worship service. See Targum Yonathan ben Uziel, Vayikra 26:1, and Rambam on Deuteronomy 16:22. So what Jacob did, he was actually at the location. So it's not really clear if he violated any commandments. He was actually at the location of where the altar would be, the place where God says, the place I will designate. So he was at ground zero of where God says we are to worship him. Therefore, Jacob doing that, having the stone, setting up a stone, and pouring a libation on it, really didn't violate this commandment because he was at the location where he's supposed to do that. Any other location other than that location would be prohibited to do this, to make a specific location for the purpose of idol worship. Now, if a person were to, if a non-Jew were to put together a multiple stone altar anywhere that he's allowed to do that, which would be anywhere in the world, that assuming he has permission to do it in that location, then he could perform worship and then scatter it. Jacob didn't have to scatter it because he was at the correct location. That's permitted for Jews. Otherwise, we're not allowed to do any, even if it's anything related to worship service, whether it's whether it's proper worship or improper worship, anything connected to a worship service, we're not set up a pillar, or for that matter, have a building, a structure, or an Asher's tree. Thank you.